In today's episode of HR Visionaries, we talk with Paul about the opportunities that lay in AI for HR departments. Stay tuned. Welcome to HR Visionaries, the show where we discover the truth behind contemporary HR. I'm your host, Benjamin. Join me as I unfold today's talent ecosystem with HR innovators from around the globe. Welcome to the latest episode of HR Visionaries. I'm very much looking forward to my guest today, Paul. It's great to have you on.
Thanks, Ben. Yeah, it's awesome. I've enjoyed the conversations we've been having and look forward to this one again.
Me too indeed. It's so funny to speak to Paul as Benjamin from Paul's job. But for our audience, there are no connections to Paul's jobs at all, and we haven't named Paul after you, so
That's right. I'm the
no
human
connection
Paul.
indeed. Indeed. Paul, can you tell us a bit about yourself? Who are you?
Sure. So, I've had an eclectic career history. People joke and say about showing that career ladder where it looks like a linear a line, but mine's more of a lot of swirls and dashes and stops and drops. And so I started as a high school math teacher. And then got into computers and then saw my first browser in 1992, web browser, and said, this is going to change the world. And started 3 tech businesses in that time span between then and 2019 and sold them. But then also landed in HR, which I'm a chief human resource officer today of a large bank in the United States. So it's a challenge. People look and say, how did you do this and that and that? But I always just say, I'm a businessman by default. That's my foundation. And then strong technical background and strong HR background. So that's what's leading me to sort of when 2 years ago I saw ChatGPT and see this AI thing. And I thought, wow, this is going to change the world again. I underestimated 2 years later how much this is changing, and it's not stopping. As we've had conversations before, it's not just the velocity isn't just increasing, it's accelerating. And that's a difference. That's still, you'd think it would slow down a little bit, but right now I still see it accelerating at a pace that's even kind of scares me in a bit. And I've logged over 1,200 hours using AI tools and have a strong understanding, my emotional journey, I call it, of what I've gone through with frustration and all these things with it. But I've learned how to manage it. That's really what I'm trying to help people today now, is figure out how to accept it, understand it, and use it effectively is the key.
Well, as humans, how do we normally deal with changes like, for example, the internet or AI? I always find those statistics so interesting to see. Well, beginning in 1994, when there was kind of the World Wide Web rollout, to 10 years later, how much had changed with regards to, how many people use the internet, how much traffic was there, and we probably will see this in a similar manner with regards to AI, however, probably on steroids.
Absolutely. I'll actually back up a little bit and go back to the desktop computer back in the mid 80s when it started landing on people's desks, at work, because I think it's a great analogy because everyone's got a computer today. I mean, there's very few workers at work that don't have, especially white collar, but even blue collar workers, they're dealing with some type of technology, but it's usually related to some system. And you go back and think about, and I use it as a great analogy because imagine the number of people word processing like Excel and Excel spreadsheets and word processing like Word. There used to be other products, but those two pretty much are the dominant ones. They've been around for decades, but how many people really know how to use them well? Very few people do. And, you say, so what in the world? Why is it taking so long for someone to figure this out? Part of that is just acceptance and training, making sure they understand and understanding what it can do for them. So I think AI is going to have a similar issue. But the issue is you can't sit back. You could get away with not understanding how to do more advanced things in a spreadsheet, but you're not going to be able to do that with AI because the people who understand how to really grab these tools and use them well and understand them, don't treat them like another human. That's something everyone out there saying, treat it like a human. No, it's not a human. It's very different. That's not bad, but learn how to do it. Like with Paul and Paul's job, he's going to be great at doing some things that you really need him to do in other tools. But as long as you understand it, know what they can do well, know their limitations, know that they don't have emotional context for everything they're telling you. They might be programmed to kind of say they understand, but they really don't. And as long as you understand that and effectively use it, I think that's what's going to be key, is helping people cross that. And you're right, it's change management on steroids.
Well, and I think what's also very interesting is the perspective. So you just mentioned, okay, well, there were computers introduced to many people in the workplace already in the 80s. However, looking back, it kind of felt that, well, this entire, PC-driven, network-driven, mail-driven, internet-driven working kicked off much later, but indeed had been around for quite some time. And now we didn't actually we don't realize how long it has been around.
Right. And that's the thing. And that's the thing that scares me a little bit. Again, the concept of a smartphone's been around at this point maybe for 13 years, 14 years. It depends what time you give it.
Oh my God, I have an amazing brain teaser for you. And well, you probably know, but many people struggled. Okay, sorry, I have to interrupt. Okay, obviously over here in Europe, the World Championship in Football World Championship 2006 was a super big thing for people here in Germany. And there's a brain teaser. Tell me what was the most popular app during the World Championship in 2006. And obviously, pardon?
Right. Yeah, I was going to say it wasn't on a smartphone.
Exactly. So this App Store was introduced only 2 years later, and that is so absolutely insane that you kind of don't realize. Okay, well, during the World Championship, that was basically yesterday. There was no iPhone and there was no App Store.
No, I had a Palm Pilot and my phone. I had two devices. That little Palm Pilot's how I sent messages and emails. And it took me a long time to get rid of that Palm Pilot. I loved my Palm Pilot. And then I went to a BlackBerry, which, again, was sort of the predecessor to a smartphone. But Apple changed the entire world when they put their system out there. Of course, they had already done it with the iPod, but how we all listened to music back then. And look at how we listen to music today, right? Pretty much stream it on apps on devices. So yeah, it truly is amazing. And so you're right, the desktop computer a decade and a half, and AI just keeps shortening it. That's what's going to be amazing, is how much it just keeps shortening on us.
Well, as a CHRO, how do you make sure that your HR department is on board with these changes? So people may find AI interesting, they're curious. However, some people may also feel a bit scared.
Yeah, and so it really is to having those discussions. It's really talking about it, making sure they understand, getting them to understand how they're feeling about it. And you've got those, right? There's always those people that'll jump right in and start using it and find effective ways to do it, and that's cool. Then you'll get those who might dabble in it and it doesn't really do anything for them. They set it aside, saying, "Nope, not worth it. I don't get anything out of it." And then you get those who just won't even touch it. So you have to make sure that you say to all of them, "That's okay." That's okay, that we're going to have that. That distribution of people, the early adopters all the way through to late majority, that's okay. That happens every time. So make sure they understand that, but then continue to talk to them saying, but we got to continue to move forward. We got to help you understand what this is, how it works, why it exists, what the team's going to look like in the future. That's what we talked about, having these AI digital colleagues on your team like yours. What's that going to look like? And what's that mean to you? But it really is having the conversations, providing some training, providing opportunities for people to get in there, dig in. But also, one of the things I found, and I did this with my two talent acquisition, the recruiters on my team, is I showed them how to take a job posting, a simple job posting, and create two LinkedIn posts for it, given target audiences, two different target audiences. One was people returning to the workforce after a hiatus, and one was people in HR who are looking for that next challenge. Same job posting, very different LinkedIn posts that come out of it when you ask AI to help you generate for these two audiences. And what's really cool is on LinkedIn, knowing how the algorithm works, that item targeted to that person is going to have words and stuff in it that really focuses on them. So it's going to show up in their feed. That was something they're like, they hadn't thought of, like, okay, yeah, it'll resonate when someone reads it. No, it's now going to show up in their feed because it's got content material that pertains to them or what they've been reviewing. So it's learning those types of nuances. It's more than the mechanics. It's what are the other benefits you get out of using AI in your job. And when you show that and produce those success stories, people start to get interested, like, oh, that's cool. How can I do that in my area? And that's when you get them to say, okay, now I'm willing to listen.
Well, I would love to dig a bit deeper here to talk about success stories. Given, well, I think over the course of the year there has been like enthusiasm, well, negativity around AI, and when it comes to AI, it's always like with to the power of, I don't know, 80 or whatever. So it's just insane in terms of like how emotional people get around AI, how scared they are, how happy they are.
Yeah.
So as a leader, how do you make sure that people do not have like a super negative or super positive, but ideally a kind of objective view on, well, what does it mean for me? So how can I create a success story? And well, do I need to be scared? If I should be scared, I need to prepare for that. However, if there are success stories, I should work on the success stories.
So the one thing I found, and again, I think this is true across the board, whether it's AI or not, is the level of emotional intelligence of the individual will really help you understand where they probably are with AI. Those with a little bit more self-awareness and resilience and have those types of capabilities will be likely to accept it, understand it, and go with it. Those who have less of that, probably even shows up as some less confidence in their world and in themselves, are probably going to be the ones that are going to be more skeptical and afraid of it. So in my mind, it's identifying that and helping them build that confidence, helping them show that this is a tool. I mean, that's the thing. These are tools to help you in your career, much less any other tool. If you take some type of training, it's a development concept. These are tools that will help you, and show them how to use those tools to be better at what they're doing, or even discover new concepts and possibilities. That's the cool thing about AI, is you can do things that you can't do with other humans. One of my best prompts I teach people is, tell me 3 questions I should ask you to learn about this topic. Now, again, think about that. And when I tell that to people, they kind of stop and go, what? I can ask it that? And you're like, yes, you can. And again, I say, you wouldn't go up to a professional and say, so tell me 3 things, Ben, I should ask you to learn about everything you know about your career. You'd be like, well, I don't know, right? But AI will say, well, here's 3 things to get started on. And that's powerful. That's when you learn to go beyond the get it to process efficient, analyze this data I'm giving you, or generate me a good email, or take this email and make it better in my resume. Those are simple tactical things. But when you start getting into what can AI do, I challenge people, think about the things you aren't doing today and you can get AI to help you do. That's power. That's when you start to get people kind of excited.
Well, the successes, I think this is probably indeed the very key, right? So to have like positive emotions around AI, while well, not downplaying, but perhaps mitigating or moderating the negative impacts.
And right, it's just getting people to tell those stories, and that's key. I had a speech I gave about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and at the end of the speech, I always tell people, don't take pictures of the screens. I give you a QR code at the end. You can download the PDF of all this stuff. So there was I had cards, physical cards with the QR codes too, in case people want to hold something and take it away. So there was a woman sitting there, and she grabbed one of those cards, and I was not just doing my speech. I saw she was on her laptop doing something. She said to the whole group afterwards, she goes, I downloaded his PDF. I had this thing I was trying to do yesterday to update my job description and convince my employer I'm doing more than what's on there and get paid more and this type of stuff. She goes, and I used AI and it was okay. She goes, I downloaded his things and used a couple of, I call them snippets, that he had in there. She goes, I can't believe the difference in what the results are I'm getting right now. She goes, this is going to convince my boss to do it. So with her telling that story, that got everyone else, because there were some people like, okay, yeah, that's nice. But then everyone else was like, oh, I want to learn how to do that. And that's what it is we just got to help each other. It's that human connection. when we hear stories, you think about how marketing is driven. They tell stories about real humans, and that's what gets you inspired to say, I want to do that.
What do you tell people if they are worried about this? So for example, well, this lady who downloaded the PDF and then was able to be like 5, 10 times more efficient than her peers were or are, who didn't participate in that in the class, or who didn't participate in your speech. So for them, there is a massive disadvantage. Then for others, there's a massive advantage. So there's kind of a great split there.
Yeah, and from a lot of what I've done in my career, I look back at my career and have AI help me saying, how did I succeed doing these types of things, and asking it to ask me questions, interview me to find out what I actually did to be successful. And when I start telling my stories, it helps synthesize it. Again, another great way of using it. But one of the things I learned is when you've got something like change management or something that people might fear, like AI, is how do you approach it? Well, you can kind of say to them, hey, if you don't do this, you're going to be left behind. That's the fear factor stuff. So it's generally not going to get people. That's the sort of stick and carrot thing. You're not going to get people to really pay attention or want to do it. In fact, others may dig their heels in if you start telling them this is going to happen. So instead, what you do is you flip the equation and you start talking about inspiration. You talk about what it's going to look like when they've got this capability. You show them or have their peers tell them, I can't believe how different this is, and get them to say, I want that too. So it's sort of it's that motivation, the autonomy, mastery, and purpose, as Dan Pink says in his book. You've got to give that to them. And once you do, they're motivated to say, all right, now I'm ready to go. Of course, the issue is autonomy, mastery, and purpose are great for humans, but now that AI is going to drop on the scene, what happens when AI's got that mastery? What happens when AI's got that purpose, or what is your purpose now if it's not to be a master in your trade?
Absolutely, I think that is well, that's a pill to swallow for many people, right? So well, I've perhaps defined myself as a great subject matter expert, and then AI comes around and quickly knows things better than I did. I do. So I'm wondering. So what do you think about those situations? So I'm turning 40 soon. I've been around for some time, and I realized that also 20 years ago, some people were a bit scared. Back then the people in their 50s were scared that people now enter the workforce who are great at Excel and PowerPoint and could do things like 10 times faster than they could do. However, those people had a job, those people had a great career, so there was no problem that the young people were able to do things in a different way. So things have evolved quite well there.
So I think there's probably three angles on that. The first one is this concept of what's called interactional expertise. It was a professor that put him up with that, and that sounds very professorial and research oriented. Basically, what it means though is that you can develop the skills with all these AI tools. You won't become a master at maybe a topic, but you can, if you interact with it and figure out how to really interact with these things well and drill it and push it to different levels, you can actually become conversant in an area well enough to be able to talk to other people. He had a program where he had students who were not software developers, 9 students who were not software, an entire semester. At the end, they developed an entire website with connections, everything. I mean, these were not software developers. And one of the students even said, I think I could gaslight a recruiter now to hire me as a software developer, because he taught them this interactional expertise. And he warned them, you're not masters, you're not, programmers, but they knew it well enough to gather this resources and put it together. That's what people are going to have to figure out. So I think once they figure that out, how do you use it for interactional expertise? I love that. The second piece is how to manage these bots. We've got to figure out whether it's us as colleagues that can delegate to these things or a leader managing these things. It's how you pull them all together, get them working together like it is a regular team, but there's different nuances, a whole different skill set than it is managing a team of humans, and even more when it's a hybrid of humans and bots. Is to develop those skills to manage these tools. Again, managing a word processor and Excel spreadsheets, nothing compared to trying to manage hundreds of agents running 24 hours a day, working with each other. That's going to change the way we have to look at it. And then the final thing is, I think what humans, our purpose is going to be more defined as sort of a Renaissance concept. Rather than being a subject matter expert in an area, you're going to be capable of being that interactional expertise person. You're going to be able to use the tools of these smart LLMs, or smaller. LLMs are probably going to go away. They're all going to be much smaller, very focused and stuff, experts in their field. But it's being that Renaissance person that's going to be able to tap into those resources and still keep the one thing humans have. The innovation, ingenuity, the way we process. These things think they reason, they don't reason. They process logic. Our reasoning is a little different, which sometimes gets humans in trouble because sometimes we'll do things that are not reasonable, which can scare people. But that's what's going to keep us in the loop, keep us human, keep us driven, is how to bring that to a whole new level. So it excites me. Now, again, that scares people when you start talking like that, because they'd rather just focus in and say, I just want to know this one thing. I don't think you're going to be able to do that anymore. You're going to have to say, no, how do you take that one thing along with this thing, along with that thing, and make it all work?
When you think about the most important skills in 2028, what do you think will be very top of the list?
I think it's that interactional expertise concept, the concept of being able to get information out of these systems in ways that we aren't thinking really about today, along with that critical thinking and problem solving. Those are going to be key. Communication, communicating with humans, but also communicating with these entities, these agents and bots. I think those types of things are still going to be the ones that are going to be there. The ethics, making sure ethics stays involved. That's another big one too, is, we've kind of figured out ethics between humans, although some people aren't always as good at that as they should be. But there's an ethics about using these systems, authenticity in particular. Well, what's it look like? I always say, don't just copy what you get from ChatGPT or any AI tool and make it your own. That's not authentic. Make it yours. Add your stories, your context, add the things we have, which is world context and experience that these things don't have. And then, as I say, use AI to be a better you, not another you. And I think that's going to be key skills for people, is to figure out how to do that, maintaining that authenticity and that human piece that we aren't going to give up. And the AI is not going to figure out. We don't even understand how our brains really work right now. And until we figure that out, or the computers figure out, we're okay. Now, when the computers figure that out, then we're in trouble, because they'll probably, do things that we don't want. But there's lots of sci-fi out there about that. But the question is still think we're quite a ways away from there. But I think people need to focus on those specific skills. Emotional intelligence, both for humans and what it looks like. I call it EI for AI. What it looks like there. You don't need empathy with an AI tool, because if you're empathetic towards it, you're probably not going to get the most out of it, because it doesn't care. It's not the cursors. It's not sitting there waiting for you to interact with it again. It's just there when you need it. And that's a different mindset.
Well, I was wondering, people are emotional around AI, given it is very potent, and it's also in many ways a bit of a black box. So you just mentioned, okay, nobody knows, no neuroscientist could ever tell why I'm wearing that shirt today. We hold AI to a different standard. So it is indeed, we have very, very high standards when it comes to AI, and we could never have these high standards for employees. So to tell an employee, okay, in every situation you have to behave like that, and if he or she deviates from that, he or she is fired. But with regards to AI, we hold them to very high standards.
Yeah, so things like engagement. With
Mm.
with human beings, you want to keep them engaged, learn, and generally you do that by understanding what drives them, what motivates them, that type of stuff. And then making sure they're getting fulfilled. Maslow's hierarchy goes away with AI. It does not matter. The thing doesn't care if it's got job security and it's got food and stuff. It does not care. So that changes when you start to think of whether it's a human looking avatar or less human looking avatar. People are going to have that emotional connection. I call it my emotional journey. I talk about it in my speeches, and I teach people how to not read your voice when it's writing back something very factual. I'm reading it like my buddy's telling me this, and being snarky to me, but it's not doing that. You have to stop yourself and say, it's not being snarky or snippy with me, it's just being factual. And you got to separate that. And I think that's one of the big things we're going to have to learn. And it comes up to this point too, is you've got 100 bots on your team and they're helping you get stuff done. What happens when you don't need a few of them anymore? You turn them off, right? They're gone. Well, what's that going to look like when it had a name? Where is Cindy today? Well, no, we turned Cindy off. Cindy's deleted. Cindy's gone. And you're like, oh, right. So we got to prepare for that, because people are going to be like, well, I liked Cindy, and it's going to be tough. It's a whole new way of looking at these things.
What do you think will people, or what do you think people in the HR department should spend time on once AI co-workers can do all the stuff that is not very popular, that is, well, it just doesn't feel like value driving?
Yeah, so it's that concept. People always say, oh, it's going to replace all the jobs. Actually, it's going to open us up to do things we hadn't thought about before, or give us time to focus on things that matter more, because we don't have to deal with the tedium. We don't have to deal with the pieces and parts. And that's the hard part. That's the part that we don't quite know what that's going to look like yet. But that's why I keep pushing people, saying, so today, understand what the systems are, learn how to use them, accept them, learn how to use them effectively. That way, when it does start, it continues to evolve, because we know it's going to, then you're ready to see what it can do for us, what we can then do. It allows us to open up to do. But if you're not at that stage, as those engines really do these things well, and you're still playing catch up, you're not going to be ready to start taking advantage of the things we should be doing. The other people will be. And that's where those folks will be in a tough spot. So that's why I always say is people can't ignore this and say, well, I'll wait until it's perfect. You got to start today. The better we can help people understand what it is, how it works, what it's limited to do, but then open them up to, this is going to continue to change, and let's get it today, and then we'll worry about tomorrow.
Well, that makes perfect sense indeed, given, well, in particular with the velocity around the all the developments around AI. Well, we can't know anyhow what's going to happen tomorrow or even in 1 year's time. So therefore, well, seize the opportunity and don't worry.
Right. Yeah. And it's really, the number of tools out there is just amazing. But back in the day of the web, it was the same thing. There were web tools coming up, pop up. Look at the search engines that popped up all left and right. How many search engines are there today? Right. There's probably 2 or 3, right? Major ones. There's a bunch of smaller ones, but 2 or 3 major search engines. And what's happening to the search engine? It's going away because it's being taken over by these AI bots and stuff. So again, stuff will continue to change rapidly on us. But we've got to be prepared for that. Think of the day, we jokingly say 20 years ago, if you joked and said, did you be able to order stuff like you do on Amazon and the things we can do, you would have laughed. So there's no way there's a truck that's going to come to my neighborhood every day. We have one almost every day. There's an Amazon or UPS truck in our neighborhood dropping stuff off to everybody in the neighborhood. So that wouldn't have made sense back then, but today we do. So what's that going to look like in the future when AI manages that, and it's drones dropping the stuff off to us, or AI bots rolling down the street? No longer a UPS truck with a driver. It's a self-driven vehicle that's automated to do. That's going to look very different. That's the thing we've got to be continuing to watch and just see, because you're right. There's things we're not even thinking about yet.
Well, I have one last question for you. Well, since you have been in HR a professional for quite some time now, you have interviewed many people, and I was wondering, what are your three go-to questions to understand whether someone fits well into your team or the company?
So, generic, depending on the role, there might be some role specific ones, but the first thing is generally ask what they know about us. Because, and again, today's world, if you haven't gone out and done a little research on who a company is, you should have a website and things like that, then the question is, are they really engaged? Are they really interested and understand who we are? The second thing is I always ask them to tell me how they believe they would fit in. And again, I'm looking for not just the job characteristics, but cultural characteristics, or the types of things we do. As a bank, we do a lot of stuff in the community, and it's all out there on our website. Tell me about what that is, or on our LinkedIn page or our Facebook page. So just again, seeing that level of engagement. But the last one of my favorites is, and this is more for a leadership person in particular, but anyone's the same way. You started your day with 5 tasks, you got 3 done, and 4 were added to your list. And then I asked the question a very specific way. How does your day end? And that doesn't say, what's it look like? How does your day end? Because I want to see, especially for people that, their work piles up on them, I want them to see that concept that they're not worried about. They don't go home and get back online, because that's going to burn them out. I don't want that. I want them to say, I got what I needed to get done, whether they prioritized it using Eisenhower matrix, urgent and important, whatever they did. And then there's no good answer except next day you come back and start your tasks again, prioritize them, get the ones that need to get done, and just that's the process I want to see them go through, because those are the people who can be successful. Because we all know it every day. I was jokingly say, especially as a chief human resource officer, about 10% of the day is mine. So I plan very few things, because 90% is going to be taken over by someone else. Someone's going to need something from me, and that's my job, is to be there when they need me.
I think it's a super interesting question, given it. It comes to mind what Jeff Bezos said the other day. So, I don't need, for example, for me personally, I don't need too much sleep. However, I enjoy sleeping. I think Jeff Bezos the other day said something like, okay, well, he sleeps like 8 hours a day because he needs to be very spot on with the decisions he makes. And I think it kind of echoes what you said. So, well, we need we need to focus on the important things. We need to focus on the important decisions, and therefore, what we need to do is like get all the other stuff, well, on the side, done by someone or
delegate.
Something else.
Right.
Delegate and focus on the important things, since ideally we don't want to be burned out. Indeed, yeah.
Yeah, and as someone who works from home quite often, and I know a lot of people kind of do that too now, I am very specific in my house. I have my office, and I have designated space for my computers, everything else. The laptop does not go with me on my front porch. My front porch is my relaxation spot, where I hang out with my wife, might have a drink or hang out. I do not bring the computer out on that porch. I don't bring it into our sun porch or out on the patio if I'm outside. I clearly don't bring it on the boat with me when we're going out on the boat. I'll have my phone in case someone needs me, but to me, work spots are work spots and my relaxation spots. And if you can learn to separate those, I think it helps a lot. So a lot of people don't do that. You see them floating around the house with a laptop. I'm not a fan of that. I think that's actually harder to separate those two when you do that. So I know how my day ends, and I have no guilt about, okay, I got done what I got done today. And that's again what I was looking for, people that they don't feel guilty, they don't beat themselves up and say, oh, I should have gotten all that done. It's, you got what you got done today. You step up tomorrow and say, what's next?
Wonderful. Paul, thank you so much. It was a great pleasure talking to you. It was so interesting to understand your perspective, and well, it's gonna be interesting for sure.
Thank you, Ben. Been a great time talking to you.
Was great talking to you, and thanks a lot for tuning in, and see you next time.